almost every baby born in America, actually everyone, would get a $1,000 investment account from the government under a new program championed by the president, Mr. Donald Trump. Now, they've already been coined the Trump accounts. That's what they're calling them. And this is a pro-family initiative that will help millions of Americans harness the strength of our economy to lift up the next generation. And they'll be getting a big jump on life, Trump said Monday at a roundtable at the White House with top business executives. Now, the proposal is a provision in Trump's one big, beautiful bill, the sweeping tax and spending package now making its way through Congress. Now, the government would make a one-time contribution of $1,000 to each account, according to the White House, and the accounts would then track a stock index and allow for additional private contributions of up to $5,000 per year, the White House said. Now, it's not a new idea, right? Trump accounts are similar to those baby bond programs that operate in, say, California, Connecticut, and Washington, D.C., but those state programs were intended to minimize the wealth gap by offering support for children from low-income households, whereas this Trump program would be available to people regardless of their socioeconomic status. Now, my next guest will probably find this program interesting because in a few years, he might be looking at some of these counts. Welcome, please, into the show, Mr. Luke Lloyd. Luke, thanks for coming on.
Hey, Scott.
All right, brother. Interesting. I mean, I'm not against this idea. What say you?
I think you used the right term there. Interesting. This is very interesting because you can take this in a lot of different directions. Of course, it's great that we're giving kids that are born maybe $1,000 and saying, hey, you can't touch this money until way down the road. You know, if it grows at 7-8% a year through the stock market, through, all the gains that might be expected in the stock market for the next 40 or 50 years, that $1,000 might turn into six-figure amounts and help you for retirement. Of course, it sounds good. But to me, it goes right along with everything we always talk about. We always talk about what we call the government Ponzi scheme. We talk about the social welfare systems and how government intervention usually just makes things worse. So there's a couple ways to take this. Number one, this is just another social security system. So, instead of paying up front or your on the back end, your income going into the social security system, you essentially get it up front. And this is your social security essentially to help you for retirement needs maybe down the road. The second thing you have to consider is that what happens when, these kids grow up. What do they know? What do they want to do with this money from a spending habits in the economy? So what I mean by that is all this does is prop up the stock market through the liquidity in the stock market by pumping more money into the stock market. So it helps the stock market Ponzi scheme down the road. And then when they withdraw that money, it creates issues down the road when they go to spend it because that already was an upfront money and flooded in the system. That impacts maybe future earnings down the road. And then you have the collapse of some systems. I'm not saying this is going to be the exact part of the collapse of the system, but this is part of the problem of upfront money being spent, and then we have to deal with these debt issues or these issues down the road.
Yeah, there's been iterations of this, not with babies, but say there was a time back, I remember I was just getting into the business where Bush, he wanted to hand over your Social Security to yourself, where you could have self-run Social Security, like you'd be in charge of it. And that sounds like a great idea, but what would happen. Everybody would lose all their money and they'd be back on the government dime again anyway, right? And so the government would have just, the government just would have wasted all those good efforts by giving you back your money to let you manage and watch you, blow it away. That's one thing. And number two is, this is going to cost us what? I mean, if you take however many babies times 1,000, I think it's around $3 billion a year at $1,000 per baby. And then if it does manifest itself into some decent cash, I'd like to think it would help in Social Security. But at 18 years old, how many people are that responsible when they finally can get their hands on that money? You see where I'm going with this.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So they're going to spend it before it's even useful. And then on top of that, what you kind of talked about earlier, with kind of the spending habits and behaviors, people do make the wrong decisions. So if you give that money up front and you expect them to spend it down the road, they probably aren't going to make the right decisions. And if you talk about the other side of the tax credits to babies compared to the investments for their future for this kind of fund, there's a lot of thoughts around that because we're having an issue here in America that people aren't having kids. The younger generations, we talk about this all the time, they're not having kids. So is this really going to incentivize parents to have kids when they themselves, I mean, we were kind of joking on this before the segment, like, Am I going to have more babies? Because I'm not going to receive the money. My kids are going to receive the money, even though hopefully I'm a very selfless person when I have kids and it's all about the kids. I'm sure a lot of people out there will not think that way and say, "Hey, I'm not getting the money. I don't need to produce more kids because this really doesn't benefit me." That's a bigger issue in the economy.
What about a divide with people that that can actually afford to put more into it versus the people that can't put more into it? What do you think about that?
That's a very good point there. I think $5,000 you're able to put into something like this. That's kind of the numbers they're throwing around. So, I mean, this is again another way that the wealthy might be able to save more money, but they're doing that anyway. I guess I really don't think too much of it, because if you're wealthy, if you have some money to pack away for your kids through a 529 plan for college education or their own custodial brokerage account, they're already doing that. So I guess this really doesn't impact it that much, because if you are having the money, you're already kind of doing that thing.
Any other better ideas about incentivizing childbirth, or anything to make the debt load a little bit easier? I mean, this is not. I mean, okay, I'm going to say A for effort, probably C for execution. What do you think?
I think that's a great point. And I think this issue is bigger at play here. There's bigger macro factors. I think a lot of kids aren't having, or a lot of kids, my age, I should say, 20s, 30s, aren't having kids because of economic issues out there. Obviously, the inflationary issues, they can't afford to buy a house. Most people don't want to raise a family maybe in an apartment or something like that. I think there are other issues at play with social media. Everyone's comparing themselves. Everyone's on the dating apps, not thinking monogamous wise, or thinking more polygamous wise. So not saying there's anything wrong with either of those. I think there's so many more societal factors at play. I don't think money directly is going to impact any kind of behavior. I think we have to go through a full reckoning of values in America to kind of get us back on track. It's a value issue, and frankly, I don't have the solution to how to get values back on track. I think that starts with parenting, and frankly, I think the previous maybe generations of parents didn't do their job to raise their kids with great values in a lot of ways. And I hate to say that. I think there's a lot of issues with parenting in today's world, but it all starts with the parents. And if the parents don't have good values, the kids don't have good values. And I think that's kind of where it starts.
I don't think I think you're being fair. I don't think that's harsh, and I think that the problem is that the parents want to be friends with their children, and that just isn't possible. You can't do that.
I saw a post today, and I actually gave it a like. One of my mentors and friends said, "I am not going to be my son's friend. I'm not going to be my daughter's friend. I'm going to be their father." And that's exactly what my father said to me his entire life. He looked me over in my eyes with a cigar and said, "Luke, I will never be your friend. I will always be your father."
Yeah, because you only got one father. You can have a ton of friends, and that's exactly right. Same with your mom. All right, brother. Thanks for being on. Luke Lloyd, always got something interesting to say. Appreciate you coming on. Lloyd Financial